stop, you're in Steelers country. If you're a Denver Broncos fan, because again, there don't seem to be that many. Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 2 of the Rebuttal. I'm your host, Robby A. Shaw, and this week we will be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Denver Broncos in Pittsburgh on Sunday, September 20th, and I believe is a 1 p.m. start in Pittsburgh. Every time I look at it online, it says 10 a.m., but I think they're adjusting for Arizona time because that's where I am. So we're just going to go ahead and say 1 p.m. start tomorrow in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Just as a quick recap for those who didn't watch and for the 5 or 6 people that did watch my last video, thank you. Just a recap, we did talk last week with my good friend Shamel, who's an avid Giants fan, a very big Giants fan, and we talked about the Giants versus the Steelers and what we thought the outcome was going to be. Here is a quick clip from last week.
I can see the score 35-21.
I really see it being like 10-21. I don't think y'all gonna get more than 10 points on us, if that. And after that, as we said, we both thought the Giants were gonna lose to the Steelers, and we both had different, varying ideas of what that final score would look like. But based on that, we pretty much had the same assumption that the Giants would lose. So I watched the game, and it was a really good game at first. It was a really good game all throughout, especially if you're a Steelers fan. Let's start there. But as a Giants fan, I feel like the Giants actually had a lot, especially in the beginning, to be happy about because the Giants really did come out. They looked really hungry. They looked like they were really trying to prove a point and that this isn't going to be the same Giants team that you've always seen. They were actually going to really put up an effort with this new, younger squad, and they were going to try to play the Pittsburgh Steelers like they should. It almost seemed as though they knew that they were the underdogs, which they had to know. But they weren't going to play like underdogs. They were going to make the Steelers come out and beat them. And in the first 2 series, especially on offense and defense, they looked really sharp and hungry. They looked really, really hungry. In the beginning, I was honestly actually nervous because the first drive with the Steelers, we came down, we didn't do really anything, and we gave them the ball back. And I think if I remember correctly, after that is when the Giants scored. So, as I was saying, the Steelers didn't look great starting the game against the Giants. They did not look like they were in sync, and especially on offense, which we kind of expected. We kind of expected since there hasn't been any preseason, there hasn't really been a training camp, there were no mini camps, that the Steelers were going to come into this game kind of sluggish, kind of slow on offense, and they did. We started off sluggish again, and the first punt, and it's muffed, and the Giants get the ball at the 1-yard line. And at that point, I remember thinking, man, this is less than ideal. I do want to say it's less ideal, but it's kind of what we expected. And also, I have to say, as a true Steelers fan, the Steelers are known for playing down to opponents. Whenever they have a team that they should easily beat, we're known for kind of, just going through the motions sometimes. And I'm not saying this happened this time. I am absolutely blaming that miscue just on the fact that there was no preseason, no mini camps, things like that, where you get all the jitters out. So this is literally the first first punt of the new season, and there's bound to be jitters. And he muffs the punt, the Giants get it back, but our defense holds and limits the Giants to 3 points. At that point, the Giants were up 3-0. Then we kick a field goal. Then the Giants go up 10-0 on that Slayton touchdown pass from Daniel Jones. And then we go down, we score, but our extra point goes off one of the uprights, so it's 10-9. And then after that, we get the ball in the last 2 minutes of the game, in the first half, and Ben leads a great drive. And I feel like that's when you saw the wheels start to turn, and you saw things start to come together, because after that, that's when we went down, scored again before the half. So we're going into the half 10-16. We have the ball. After that, we go down and score another field goal. So it's 19-10. So at that point, the Giants are kind of okay. And in between all of that, there was that pass where the Giants had the ball in the red zone. We're driving, and Bud Dupree pressures Daniel Jones into throwing a very bad pass. A pass he shouldn't have thrown. He could have thrown it away. He should have just taken a sack. Anything is better than what he does. He throws the football under pressure. I really believe Bud Dupree hit his arm. The ball floats, and there's nothing but white jerseys. Cameron Hayward grabs the interception, and now we're going the other way. And so I really feel like at that point, that's when things started to change for the game because it took so much out of them. It was a 19-play drive, and the Giants looked really good, and they were taking care of our defense. But those are the things that happen with a younger team. Those are the things that I think happens with a team that has a new coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, a second-year quarterback, and they couldn't run. They literally averaged 1.5 yards per carry, which if you don't really know football is not a lot. If you need 10 yards to get a first down and you average 1.5, then even after 4 downs, you've gone 6 yards. And Saquon Barkley is a great player, but he only got 6 yards for the entire game. That Pittsburgh defense was very much ready for him. They didn't only rush 4, they were always rushing 5, which was by design. You want to get Daniel Jones uncomfortable in the pocket. You want to get him jittery. You want to get him jumping around, and that's what it seemed like they did. And Daniel Jones had a decent game. Daniel Jones didn't exactly do badly. What was his passer rating? I'm trying to see. I have it written down here. He had I guess he did do badly. His passer rating, which I still don't completely understand, was 79.2 as his rating, but I know he was sacked 3 times, they hit him 8 times, and he threw 2 interceptions. So if you take that, one of those interceptions being that big one inside there in the red zone where they were going to get at least 3 points, and another one was where got us kind of going in the first half where TJ Watt, who usually rushes, drops back, picks off the pass, and now we guess where we get our first 3 points from. So little things like that, the mistakes that the Giants made, even though we made a mistake or two, the mistakes that the Giants made, coupled with the fact that we have a really good defense, really is what I think propelled us. And I think it's what's going to propel us every week going forward. Because remember, this defense was really good last year. They led the league in sacks and in turnovers. I think it was 54 sacks, 38 or 34 turnovers last year. That's what this defense did. And if you watched last week, for those 4 people that did, if you watched last week, you saw that I said if we would have had Ben at quarterback last year with the defense that we had last year, we could have at least won 2 more games. That gives us 10 wins for the season, and that gets us into the playoffs. And now, speaking of Ben comes back. Ben throws 21 for 32. Means he missed 11 passes for those who don't really watch football. Had 229 passing yards, threw 3 touchdowns, and had no interceptions, and a 117.8 passer rating. So just looking at those 2 things, Daniel Jones had a 79.2 passer rating, 117.8 for Ben Roethlisberger. If you don't know anything else, 117 is higher than 79, which means Ben did better than Daniel Jones. That's just what we're going to go at. We're not even going to talk about anything else. Again, I don't understand what that means completely, but I know 117 is higher than 79, and in this case, higher is better. So there's that. I think the Giants are actually going to win more games than they did last year. They may end up 8-8. I'm not sure what their record was last year, but they may end up 8-8. And I think that's really good for a team with a young quarterback, a team with a new head coach, I think a new defensive, and I know a new offensive coordinator. So my hats off to the Giants. This is the kind of win that I kind of wanted and expected. It wasn't the prettiest win ever, but we'll take it. And it also made me feel really good as a Steelers fan because Juju Smith-Schuster had a couple of touchdown passes. I was a little upset about that because the person I was playing in my fantasy league also had Juju, so he got a lot of points for that. But it was happy to see him having fun again. Last season, if you watch the Steelers games, they were a lot of gritty, we're going to win just because we're not going to let you do anything kind of wins. But this one kind of felt like, okay, if we do need to put up some points and Ben is starting to get a good lather and starting to feel like he's playing football because it's been over a year since he played football, then maybe. The Giants defense, they got to him a few times. I think they had 2 or 3 sacks, and they hit him a lot. And this is what it is. But it feels good as a Steelers fan to have Ben back, to be able to say we have a really good quarterback back there. We have a really good running game because even with Connor going out, Benny Snell came in, 19 carries, 113 yards, which is good, 5.9 yards a carry. So as a Steelers fan, I am very happy about how the game went. And I really don't have any complaints. I thought we may have had a possible letdown because everybody, was picking us to win. Even like I said, Shamel picked us to win. A Giants fan who was very happy with the moves they made and knows where they are, thought that the Giants would lose. And they, I did too, and they did. But they did a little bit better than I thought they would. And, hats off to them for really not just phoning it in, but really trying their best to win this game. So that brings us to this week's game against the Denver Broncos. Now, I must admit, even though the Broncos versus the Titans was right on after the Steelers game, I had no interest in watching that game. And I don't really feel that bad either, because it wasn't like it was my team that was playing, but it's also a team that I don't really care about either way. I don't care about the Titans that much. We do play them in a few weeks, so maybe I should have cared about them. But it was late. It was later than even the Steelers game. And I honestly didn't care, so I didn't watch it. And the score at the end of the game, 16-14, kind of feels like I was right. It wasn't that good of a game. So I was also trying to find a Broncos fan. I found it interesting that I even went on Facebook and said, hey, do I know any Broncos fans of the Facebook friends I have? And someone actually gave me one Broncos fan's name. But as people do on Facebook, everyone commented and they were like, I'm not a Broncos fan. I'm not a Broncos fan at all. And I'm sitting there like, okay, that wasn't what the question was. The question was, who is a Broncos fan on my timeline? So I didn't exactly get a lot of responses. And the one person that I did find, I did reach out to them, and they never responded after they said yes, they were a Broncos fan. I was like, hey, would you like to be on my YouTube show that I'm doing? And they never responded. So I hope that doesn't mean that a lot of Broncos fans just don't want to admit they're Broncos fans, because it's so early in the season. You guys should really still be feeling good and being happy about your team. I know I don't know a lot, so I'm not going to pretend I know a lot. I do know Drew Luck. Is it Drew Luck or Drew Lock? Drew Lock. Sorry, Drew Luck, if there is a Drew Luck. But I know I looked at the stats, and I do have my little cards here, 216 yards, 1 touchdown, and a 95 passer rating, which is better than Daniel Jones had against the Steelers. So that should be a good prospect and make you guys feel good. And then Noah Fant, I believe he's a tight end, but I feel like he spreads out like a wide receiver as well. 6 targets, 5 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Sounds really good. If you have Noah Fant in your fantasy league, I'm sure you're happy about that. Melvin Gordon, even 15 carries, 78 yards, and 1 touchdown. And the weird part about that is it's just weird to hear Melvin Gordon playing on a team other than the Chargers. But, this is the business of football, and this is what happens. But, so Denver looked pretty good. I do know that Shamel told me, and I saw it, that he had the Broncos defense as his defense because he expected them to do really well this year. With Von Miller going out with an injury for the entire season, that defense is not the same. So I don't know exactly. I think they're ranked 7th right now, but it's after week 1. And honestly, I don't really care about rankings after week 1. Like when we get to week 7 or 8, that's when you see what teams are consistently doing. But right now, again, it's the first week of the season, no real training camp, no mini camps, no preseason. Everyone is still really finding their legs, and that's on offense and defense. And the funny thing I feel like is that usually you would think if there's everyone's still struggling out of the gate, then offenses would do better. But it seemed like in most cases this week that defenses were just as ready as offenses were. The offenses may have been a little bit sloppier, and that made the defense look better. But I feel like a lot of teams were evenly matched, other than that blowout of the Ravens and the Browns, which was so bad. Other than that, the scores I saw all seemed relatively, even. So there's that. So we talked about the Steelers and what their defense did last week. We talked about their offense and how Ben looked really good. Juju looked really good. He did spread the ball around, so a lot of different receivers got a lot of catches, which was great. We do have Benny Snell as our running back right now because James Conner is out. And even we have the kid from Notre Dame, Claypool, who had a couple of catches last week. So our offense is looking pretty good. Our defense is looking as good as they did last year, if not better. And now let's swing ourselves over to Denver. We talked about Drew Lock, 216-yard passing, yards passing, 1 touchdown, 95 passer rating. Noah Fant, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 81 yards and 1 touchdown. And then Melvin Gordon, 15 carries, 78 yards and 1 touchdown. So, looking at that, looking at what the Steelers did last week, putting up 26 points on the Giants, and looking what Denver did last week, putting up 14 points on the Titans, seems like it's time for me to pick who I think will win this game. And this is the one part that it kind of sucks that there's no one else here. But then at least I have this on record, and you guys can see who I picked, which is pretty obvious, who I think is going to win this game. And that's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It has to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Just looking at, yes, we've only played one game, but even if we go back to last year, the Broncos were decent. Well, if below 500 is decent, they were as decent as you can be because they ended the season at 7-9 and they were second in the AFC West. And then we had the Steelers. I don't care where we finished in the AFC North because we didn't make the playoffs, but we were 8-8. And our defense, I think, we brought the same defense pretty much back that we had last year. We've lost, I think, 1 or 2 players, but we have players that will step up. We have players that will answer the call. So, having said all of that, I believe the score for this game will be 24-17 Steelers. I really think I could give us a few more points, but we still have a NFL caliber defense on the other side of the field, and we're not trying to blow everyone out. If we blow a team out, that's great. You know, there's no problem with that. But I do see that Denver defense was able to hold Derrick Henry, the rushing leader from last year, to 100 and something yards, but on 31 carries, averaging 3.7 yards a carry. They made it their point to stop the running game. And they did for the most part. And it's not like they got blown out. They lost by 2 points. So the defense of the Denver Broncos did enough to keep them in that game. And they could almost had a chance to win. So, with that being said, I see the Steelers still winning this game, of course. I mean, because I have not seen anything from Denver in a while since the days of Peyton Manning that would make me think that they could not, that they would beat us, even including that random day, that playoff game with Tim Tebow, that we don't want to talk about. So, outside of that, which no one saw, and outside some miracle connection with a game that shouldn't be that close, I do see the Steelers winning and going 2-0 in this young season. That's all that we have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining. Next week, we will be playing the Texans, and I am really working hard to find an actual Texans fan that will admit that, because the Texans are a decent team. I mean, I feel like the Broncos are a decent team. Everyone's a decent team in this point of the season because you've only played one game. So either you're 1-0 or you're 0-1, but none of those mean you can't make the playoffs with the rest of the year. If you've already thrown in the year, then God, what are you doing? Then you are just following a team. You're not a fan. You are just following that team. But anyway, thank you so much for joining, guys. Again, I'm going to be doing this for the entire season, so feel free to tune in before every single Steelers game. You will see my post, and you will see who I think is going to win. I'm really going to be as honest as I can. I feel like there are going to be some weeks where I don't think we're going to win, but does that make me a good fan or not? I guess only time will tell. It'll make me an honest fan. Or will that just make me a follower of the Steelers? I don't know. But hey, it's been great. You guys have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.